Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Aaron and Sam for another episode of the Mount Rushmore series. We are doing probably maybe the toughest one so far. We're attempting a Mount Rushmore of Disney animated classics. That's right. Moana 2 is out in cinemas this Friday, believe it or not. It's sort of come out of nowhere. We were chatting about it before we hit the live button. There's a live action film being shot as we speak, starring The Rock. So we've got the reboot to come as well. And with the series being weekly, we're tying into a few new releases. We thought, you know what? Let's try the Mount Rushmore. And last year, we all came together for a big top 10 to celebrate 100 years of Disney. So it's going to be interesting visiting Disney again in different circumstances. We'll each have our own Mount Rushmore list, our own personal one. And then the real task is trying to come together for the combined one at the end. But before I even continue talking, how are we all doing tonight?
Yeah, good. Not too bad. I'm kind of dreading the final Mount Rushmore because I don't know if we're all going to come to agreement on certain things or whether it's going to be like a mad fight to see what stays. But yeah, I'm good and I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think everyone will be very fair, but I think we'll have different reasons. I think it'll be very interesting. I know it's weird. I was thinking about because every time I do something like this, I put something in the background. I put some old Disney DVDs and books, and I realized I couldn't initially find anything because I just watch stuff on Disney Plus, and so I don't have anything physical about. So I had to go into my old bedroom and go into an old cupboard to kind of get some things out. But no, I think it's fun to talk Disney. And I guess if anyone's seen that original Disney video from last year, then there'll be some clues as to kind of what we'll have chosen today. But yeah, I think coming down to that final four will definitely be we're really unsure as to what that's going to be.
Yeah, definitely. And people watching at home, we do want to hear from you. So please do comment your Walt Disney Animated Classic Mount Rushmores. Now, the key of this being the Walt Disney Animated Classics, this doesn't mean Pixar. This doesn't mean the unofficial sequels. I always used to put it to, have they got the number on the side of the DVD or the Blu-ray case? No, then it doesn't count. So that's where I stand with it. You can find the official lists sort of here, there, everywhere these days. I think they're in the 60s now? They've got to be up to about 62, 63?
Yeah.
So there's a fair amount. And as you get to recent years, there is obviously way more sequel ones, as there are same with Pixar. Then sequels became a big part of the studio moving forward. So with Disney, you get the evolution of cinema, and it goes back, as we said, the studio 101 years now, I guess we could say. So it is tricky doing this. Even myself, if you watched our video last year, I don't have the knowledge that many of us will have of Disney, particularly the animated classics. This isn't my best Disney terrain territory, not including Star Wars or films they bought, is near a Pixar type thing. So that's me getting that out of the way. I've mentioned about people commenting. And we also post about social medias because I've realized I forgot to do that too. You can go get a link to Linktree in the description in the bottom. I almost said the link 3 times in one sentence then. That will put you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and now Blue Sky. That's right, guys. There's now 5 social medias that I have to update. And it's going to be one of those where there are posts. Thankfully, there is scheduling software which does make our lives a little bit easier. But yes, we are on the Blue Sky revolution. A link is in that Linktree link. I will say on Blue Sky, it actually lets you share the YouTube links with it being playable. I forgot those good days. So I know it's. I'm so used to uploading a photo and putting a link in because Twitter doesn't let you. But that's honestly what kept me going. As soon as I saw YouTube, I was like, yeah, I'm in. But the way it's Mount Rushmore. So we're gonna each take in turn to do one of our picks. As I said, at the first, our ones are completely personal to us. There's no rules or regulations for your 4. There could be what you think the 4 best ones are, your 4 favorite films, the 4 that mean the most to you. So we all get to go through our own personal histories with the films we're picking. And then, as I said, we come together. And the reason it's a Mount Rushmore is it obviously reflects the growth of the nation that is America with their 4 ex-presidents. So, yes, I know we've not had an upload in 2 weeks in this now. We made some very unfortunate jokes about an election that happened. Not afraid of the outcome of that. It's just we joked that the wrong person got put in power. Mount Rushmore's going to get 5 heads very quickly. and that might make the series a lot easier. But yeah, it would normally be taking this episode, but we've not been able to get him on due to being very busy. I don't have the Disney knowledge, which is a great way for me to segue into starting with my first pick. No, it's not Donald Trump's favorite Disney film. I don't know what that would be, but I'm going for probably the most personal one. You guys have probably all heard the story with me in this film before. I put it quite high up in my top 10 ranking. If anyone would even consider remembering, it's the Disney film I used to watch the most from the animated classics as a kid. It's The Jungle Book. I adore this film. It's lovely. I know it's obviously based off a Kipling book. I know the Kipling book's so different, but it just felt like one of those as a kid. I liked the Elephant Sergeants. I thought it was really entertaining as a child. As an adult, I actually still really like it. And Disney as an adult is realizing how short so many of their films are, which kind of gives me no excuse to having not seen way more. But here we are. But no, Jungle Book was always going to make my list. It is my favorite of the Walt Disney animated classics, and it's just the easiest way to get it on first for me. I doubt anyone else will have it. I thought this was something that was universally loved as a kid, but as I've grown older, I've realized that not many people talk about it, and I wonder if do I sound like a dad or something? Talking about the wrong
days. I mean, the Jungle Book was one that like I watched here and there as a kid, but there were other ones that I'll probably mention in a minute that I watched a lot more regularly. It was one of those ones where like I liked it, but I didn't. I understood it as a classic, but like I didn't watch it nearly as much. I kind of respect it, but I don't know. There are just other Disney films I go to more regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure we had it. I'm looking at like the ranking that I did of basically it's all the Disney animated films pre-2000 essentially, and Jungle Book in that was about halfway down. It wasn't like, oh, this is like bad, but I think for me it's very middle of the pack. I think the songs are amazing, and I think some of the characters are great, but I think the overall plot and story I don't really kind of engage with too much. I think there's just a lot stronger, but I do think it's a nice film.
That's fair. I'll take that. Aaron, do you want your first one?
Yeah, I'm just debating what order to do mine in, and there is one I'm thinking of swapping out actually at the last minute. Because there's so many to choose from. I'm going to go the opposite order actually. I'm not going to start with an obvious pick. I'm going to go with, if anyone knows me, this one is a very predictable pick. It's one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's one of the most underrated Disney films, and that is The Emperor's New Groove. I've loved this film ever since I first saw it as a kid. There was this and two other Disney animated films. I think it was The Aristocats and Robin Hood and this, that I almost wore the VHSs out. I watched them that much, and I've watched this film so much that I think I can quote it back to front. I still think it's Disney's funniest film to date. Like I can watch this film God knows how many times and still find it hilarious. And I think it is that quotability that helps. And I guess the reason I put it in mine is one, I mean, I'm biased. It's one of my favorite films of all time. And two, I think it's always, ever since it came out, it's always had that sort of underrated feel. Like, yeah, people know it and they do talk about it a little bit, but compared to stuff like, I don't know, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, it doesn't get talked about nearly as much. And I guess me putting it in my four is me just kind of championing it a little bit, because there was a little window in the late 90s and 2000s where a lot of the animated Disney films kind of went under the radar with your Atlantis and your Treasure Planets, and this also kind of falls into that category. So yeah, that's why I've picked that, and I've gone for that first because personal bias and waving the flag for it.
I've never seen it, but I've had a lot of good things about it. And because you brought up the 90s, it's true. I think when Pixar started breaking in, Disney films, I don't want to say they dropped off, but I think Pixar almost had the headlines and the attention for a very long time. And a lot of people forgot about Disney, but it wasn't the traditional Disney films hitting versus this brand new company who were redefining animation film by film.
You can tell about the time that Pixar was really picking up in the late 90s that Disney with their animated classics didn't. It's not like they panicked. It's almost like they didn't know where to go, so they tried experimenting with things that were a bit different. Hence, why we got stuff like Treasure Planet and Atlantis, which, compared to the other stuff they'd made at the time, does feel very left field. But again, it also does feel like they were trying to just kind of experiment to try and keep up with. And also, I think some of those films also integrate a little bit of CGI animation along with the hand-drawn stuff. And so does Emperor's New Groove a little bit as well. But yeah, I totally get what you mean. It does feel like there was a bit of a, not disconnect, but like they were trying to play catch-up with them with themselves a little bit.
Cool. No, but it's true. It's very true. I am going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go chronologically in years with mine. And I'm going to start with Sleeping Beauty as my first. I think that Sleeping Beauty is kind of... I do think it's in a bit underrated. I think there's a lot of films that are put ahead of it. I think some people refer to it as another generic princess movie, which happens to have one of the greatest Disney villains in Maleficent. I think the animation is like top notch, and I think it really, it peaks. I think after this, there's a lot of kind of sketchy animations that maybe aren't up to scratch. I know this film didn't really perform very well at the time, so that meant for layoffs and kind of cutting corners with future animations. But I think time only helps this film. I think the colors are absolutely gorgeous. I think the music is so memorable. And I just love kind of the overall story anyway. And as I said, you have a villain like Maleficent who just, completely captures you every time she's on screen. You've got some good humor in it. I think especially nowadays, I really love when it's like the two kings are together and they're just fighting, then just having a drink. I just think that's really funny. And yeah, I just think it makes me feel really happy at the end. And I think that's what I want from a Disney film. I don't want to be left thinking or anything. At the end, I want to be, oh, that was a nice, fun ride. So yeah, really enjoy Sleeping Beauty. And it's the only princess film on my list today anyway.
I think, it's the first one as well. It's one of the most important films you could argue ever made in animation.
Well, Snow White's the first one.
Sorry,
sorry,
I've got them mixed up. Ignore me. I was about to say, is everyone excited for the remake next year? And I was like, no, wrong one. There goes my credibility. But
what credibility?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not the Disney expert. He's not here. But yeah, Sleeping Beauty. I think I'm glad you brought Maleficent because so many of the films we're probably going to talk about today or bring up, to me, the Disney villains, you mentioned Disney princesses. Yes, the princesses are iconic. They're the face of almost the company. But the villains are, to me, like what makes it as entertaining. There's a bit of a theme for maybe some of the villain picks in mine. Even Jungle Book, King Louis, love. Okay, he's a giant ape that swings around. He's got a great banger of a song. But no, Sleeping Beauty, yeah. Sorry, Aaron, I'm going to segue onto you as I awkwardly dig myself out of the hole.
I'm going to be brutally honest here. I don't have much to add because it's one of the blind spots of Disney animated classics is that I've never seen Sleeping Beauty. I've seen Maleficent, but I've not seen Sleeping Beauty. But I know it's well regarded as a classic, and it's weird. When I was a kid, I used to watch like Snow White all the time and Cinderella all the time and Alice in Wonderland. For some reason, Sleeping Beauty never was one of the ones I watched. I honestly have no idea why, and it's still one that I've never quite ticked off the list. But I will watch it at some point. I feel bad. I feel bad for the big ones that I've not seen.
It's one of those things where I had an older sister, so who had almost all of the Disney princess videos anyway. So that's kind of what I was brought up on, along with some of kind of what seemed to me at the time outliers. So like Jungle Book, Robin Hood, Dinosaur, all these other things. But I just kind of gravitated towards. I think the Disney princess ones are more easier to follow for kids, especially kind of the earliest incarnations of them. But I think, yeah, over time, this one stands out more than Snow White and Cinderella to me. I mean, to me, they're like the trio. They're like the original trio. They're the ones that I'll probably always love to go back to. But I think Sleeping Beauty just adds that bit more, whether it's, kind of, a greater cast of characters, the animation, actually developing, the Prince character. I think there's certain things that it just does better. So I think it's a shame they didn't do that well when it came out. But I think, over time, so I think it, has grown in popularity. But I think there's still so many that it comes up against.
No, I agree. And if we sort of head on to second picks, I did have mine in order, but I might change my fourth pick because I've just literally had a couple jump in. But the second one, I've just gone for a heavyweight, get them on the board as they should be. Beauty and the Beast, various different reasons. I mentioned villains. I absolutely love Gaston. He's one of my favorite Disney villains. It's outrageous. It's ridiculous. You get basically the original Battle of Helm's Deep within this film too. The supporting casts, the voices, it's been a really big one. And you brought up your sister, Sam. I've got two sisters, and both their favorites is going to end up on my list because that goes down to that childhood, right? Who's the ones that were being played the most in our household? And one of those was not only the Jungle Book, was Beauty and the Beast as well. And as an adult, I think when they did the 4K remaster, it looked like insane how good it is. And I know it was the first ever Disney film nominated for. Was it the first ever animated film nominated for Best Film at the Oscars? Not even Disney.
I think
it was the first ever.
Yeah.
The prestige of that is as big as winning that award, as far as I'm concerned, especially with how the Academy liked to be and before the rule changes of the noughties that followed. So, yeah, Beauty and the Beast is on mine. It's tricky to talk about because everyone's going to know it, but it's a tale as old as time without borrowing it. Yeah, it's on mine.
Excellent, George.
I haven't even mentioned the live action one yet, which I actually really liked it.
Let's not mention the live action right now. Let's
got Ewan McGregor as a cop.
I know.
No,
Still.
I'm not mentioning the live action one.
What about live action Moana, guys? Dwayne The Rock Johnson's found his Scorpion King costume. It looks phenomenal. What a wig. I was not getting through this video. Have you seen it, Sam? Have you seen the wig photo?
I have seen the wig photo. I mean, I love a good wig. I love a good wig. I can't wait to see it in high quality. That's all I'll say. I'm very excited to see high quality.
Lovely. Slight segue on to Aaron's second pick. Sorry, I had to bring up the Rock's wig because it's unbelievable. If you haven't seen it, Google it. And I hope there's not a real trade. Oh, here's a good question without going so far off topic. They're surely not going to do a live action trailer or teaser before Friday. Surely not.
I don't think they've filmed enough.
I know they've been filming for a fair few weeks, but or maybe a month or two because The Rock did a few postings as filming. Sorry to tangent off, but if they release like a live action poster or teaser or something, I feel like people would just get pitchforks.
They might. They might release a teaser like if you go to see Moana 2, there might be a teaser for that, but I can't.
That's what I meant. Sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry to jump in before your pick.
That's all right. No, you got me thinking now. So my second pick, I've gone for I guess it's technically modern Disney. It's a computer animated one, and it's probably my favorite of recent Disney, and that is Tangled. There are a lot of really good films. When I say recent, I'm kind of counting everything after Princess and the Frog, which is when they started going computer generated over hand drawn. And there are a lot of really good films like Big Hero 6, Frozen, even though it is a bit overrated, Zootopia, Raya and the Last Dragon, which was incredibly underrated. But I just have a fondness for Tangled because it feels like classic Disney, but with an updated kind of cheeky tongue-in-cheek twist to it. It doesn't take itself that seriously. It's not afraid to poke fun at itself or what it's doing. Whereas a lot of those old princess Disney films were they had humor in them, but they were very like cut and paste. Like, this is the plot, that's what you're getting, and that some of them are really good. I'm not discrediting them at all. But Tangled feels like here's the story of Rapunzel, but we're going to present it in a way that's a bit more like poking fun at certain things and being a bit less serious. And I kind of appreciate it for that. And I feel like it's one of the best films to kind of represent modern Disney, is that it takes something that you think you know in terms of what you think you're going to get in terms of the traditions and kind of flips it on its head a little bit. It's basically almost like if one of the traditional Disney films had the humor of something like Emperor's New Groove or Big Hero 6 kind of injected into it. And I love it for that. Plus, I think it's also endlessly rewatchable, similar to Emperor's New Groove. The songs are really good. It's got a very good villain that I don't think gets enough credit. And the characters are just endlessly likable in this film as well. And it's also visually stunning. You could say that about any of the Disney films, but like visually, the scene with the lanterns on the lake, I still think is genuinely gorgeous.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen it, which I mean,
I'm in
it's
the
one of,
same
like,
boat.
it's one of those, like, I think once I dropped off watching Disney films in the cinema, I just didn't really watch it. I didn't really watch anything after it. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued, and that was the whole reason to doing a full rewatch, is that I'd get up to the noughties and continue watching. And I've just not done that yet, but you know, there's definitely some that I really want to. Tangled's one of them. Yeah, and so I mean, I can't deny that it's probably a really great movie. But yeah, I'm gonna play it safe and say that George does not have Tangled on his list.
I don't. You know what? You brought up the not going to cinema, and I'll be really honest. I think Frozen was like the first Disney film I'd seen in like 10, 15 years, like in the new releases. Obviously, the only ones I haven't seen. And I have this. I mean, I've got a lot of. Aaron, you call it a blind spot. I don't know what mine classifies as, like a black hole, of which is like half of them. But
the Black Cauldron.
And yeah, I've heard a lot about Tangled, and I said I'm in the same boat as Sam. If I was gonna go through them all, I could recommend a really amazing podcast though that I have listened to. If anyone's a fan of Disney and you think I'm looking for a really good content creator that does Disney videos, the Disneyversity, co-run by Ben Travis, who works at Empire, is a really good podcast on Disney. So if I was to ever recommend one channel for Disney stuff, that's the one to go to.
Yeah, you recommended that to me, and I started listening to it, and I
Did
really,
you?
Yeah. I started.
I know they took a long hiatus
over a year
to
ago.
back now.
Yeah, because I was like, because I went back to the beginning, and I was like, right, I'm gonna get through a lot of stuff. I got through a good chunk, and I've not listened to it for a while, but yeah, I found it really interesting, and it's just nice to kind of hear people talk about it, because I just don't generally talk with people much about Disney nowadays, apart from some friends when the topic comes to mind. So yeah,
lovely.
But yeah, my second, I'm going to get a big hitter out the way now, and I know it's going to be on at least one of your lists, and it is The Lion King. So yeah, I have nothing between 59 and 94, but yeah, The Lion King. I feel like everything's been said about this film. I think, you know, we're slap bang in the middle of the Disney Renaissance, and I think this is where it really hits its peak. You know, it was the one that was, you know, maybe not the focus. I know there's the whole backstory about the team working on Pocahontas and the team working on Lion King. But I just think everything comes together for this, and it's my number one Disney film anyway. I think everything works. I think the voice acting is excellent. The animation, the music, the story, very simple, very effective, very Disney. And it makes you feel a lot during it. And I can't say every Disney film makes you feel like that. I don't think every Disney film should, but I think when they are trying to do that, I think they should really attempt to really execute that, you know, really well. And they do that with this film. You know, at one point when I was a kid, I couldn't say Mufasa to someone without them saying, "Stop, I'm going to cry." I think they were being a bit overdramatic, but I think it really did affect a lot of people. And I think, you know, it's one of those films that, you know, it will be shown generationally, and I think it will stand the test of time as being one of the best animated films ever made. So no, I'm very happy to put this on this list. I mean, if we were doing the top sequels, Simba's Pride, Lion King 2 would be my number one Disney sequel. I think that's in some ways almost as good. I think, it's just a great outline for a film, and I'm really glad that it was so well received and continues to be.
And we can plug Mufasa out on 20th December. I'm just going to jump in. This is my third pick, so my thoughts I'm just going to echo with you. It's one of the greatest films of all time, let alone one of the greatest animated films of all time. Hans Zimmer's score, perfect. Honestly, one of the most iconic scores of our lifetimes. I'm not just saying this as a biased Hans Zimmer fan. You mentioned Mufasa, Scar, one of the all-time greats. Be Prepared, one of the best Disney songs ever made. A song I know word for word. I have to get me very drunk at a karaoke bar to start singing it, but I can tell you, I can do a hell of a job with that. I love it. One of my sisters has PTSD from the Stampede sequence. The music is not allowed to be played without it kicking off. That's how deep that PTSD goes. So me, the Hans Zimmer fan, loves putting it on as well as I can. But yeah, it's one of the best ones ever, isn't it? It's the 30th anniversary this year. People still talk about it. It's still hype for everyone. Our generation's children are now growing up with it. So it's one of those where, on my list as well. So segue. I don't know if it's on yours, Aaron.
It's my third, so we got it in all of ours. I was going to save it till last, but this kind of happened. So, I mean, I can't. I'm pretty much just going to echo everything you two have just said. It's the one. There's only a small amount of Disney films that I would say have kind of defied, like the era in which they came out, and I feel like The Lion King is probably the biggest and best example of that. You could show it to anyone at any age, and they know immediately what it is. Even with the live action one, everyone knows The Lion King. Everyone knows the characters, the lines. It's a classic. I have a lot of nostalgia and fondness for this film. I never used to watch it as much as, say, like Emperor's New Groove and that, but it would always be one that I kind of respected and cherished, and I still love it to this day. It is one of the best Disney films for a reason. And weirdly enough, I have more memories of I think it was like the 20th anniversary DVD, and it had like these interactive games on the DVD where like you joined Timon and Pumbaa on like a safari ride. I have more memories of that than I like. Don't get me wrong, I know the film like back to front, but I used to play the shit out of those, and I absolutely love them, and I have so much fondness for not just the film but just things that came with it like that. Weird tangent, but I just wanted to mention the Timon and Pumbaa games on the DVD.
It adds to it though, doesn't it? All of that sort of thing adds to the history with it. That Disney as a brand, as an entity, is never not stopped, but they're the core ones that they sort of look out for. Is the Lion King. I won't name other films unless we're going to talk about it, but the fact that it's already on all three of ours, and it might be the only one that maybe does that, is testament to it. But yeah, it's an outright classic.
Yeah,
Sam, that sort of lovely full series. Back to your third choice.
Yeah, back to me. I mean, so the third one, again, I'm basically going off my top four here. I was a bit unsure whether to switch this out, but all it would switch to would be to another Disney Renaissance film or Snow White. And I just feel like I would like to talk about this film, and it is technically my fourth. Anyway, so I'd rather kind of say it, and that's Hercules from '97. And I think my main reason for this film is that it just feels so fun, and I think a lot of the films have their own personalities, their own kind of unique selling point. For me, this one is absolutely kind of the story, which I think is just a great one to have. And then also the music. I love kind of having kind of this gospel element and, having a bit of kind of like meta jokes in it, and also just, commenting on kind of society a little bit. I think Zero to Hero is one of the best, song sequences, and, that having kind of, Hercules being kind of this hero who's also slapped onto merchandise and stuff, I just think is a really fun angle to have. Danny DeVito is just so good in this as well. Meg just having kind of a lead female who I think a lot of them in the Renaissance had more attitude, but I just loved her. I don't give an F. I'm just gonna kind of do what I do. Yet there's still heart there and there's still vulnerability. So I really like the development of her and Hercules as well. And yeah, just doing something. Oh yeah, just seeing the gods and having Hades interact. Like I know what's his face, James Woods is kind of right now, but I mean, I think as a voice actor anyway, he does a really excellent job. And yeah, it may not stand as much of the test of time as others, but I think it's a really kind of nice film from that era and probably one of the last big Disney Renaissance films before we kind of end the 90s. So yeah, I really love it, and I enjoyed the TV show that came out of it as well. So
Hercules is a weird one. I'm going to get this mixed up with someone else, so apologies in advance. They've just announced that the live action reboot's now going to be about Hades, right? Which is very odd.
I'm not happy about that, but I guess if they want to go down a route of maybe a Maleficent, then. But I don't know how a film like Hercules and the way it is, it's kind of perspective. I don't know how that's going to work for Hades, and I don't really want to feel bad for him or anything. I don't want to,
I'm in this phase where, sorry to divert the direction, I don't know how it's going to look like him. I walked out of the Little Mermaid reboot, and it's the fish. No, I didn't walk out because of the fish, but it was like, yeah, we made the fish look like a normal fish. I'm like, okay, I get what you're doing, and it worked for the Lion King, but that's because the animals in that, it worked for what they were doing, not for Little Mermaids, and I don't think that could work for Hercules. Sorry to tell it's that conversation, but it is in that 90s run. The stage play is being worked on, I believe, as well at the moment, or is that touring next year?
No, it's playing at the Drury Lane. I've already got my tickets booked for next July, but it's at the Drury Lane Theatre, which is where Frozen was.
See, and it's right up there with Legacy, and I feel that to our age demographic, we're all similar ages here. I definitely feel like Hercules is the one that sits within our generation. It's not like I know the younger generation, but not that there's many years between them. I feel like the generation below us love Cars and Shrek. I mean, we all love Shrek, but the generation below seem to love Shrek 2 and Cars. Whereas the generation above us have never... Hercules is just sat in that, 90s kid. Is that me unfairly saying that?
I feel like there's a wave. Like, we ride a wave of the things like that. So everything that came out in the early, mid-90s, we're then riding the wave of that in kind of the very late 90s, early noughties. And it's like, great, this is all stuff that was really well received. It's only been a few years, all of that. Whereas we're then seeing Tarzan come out, Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis, and kind of these, and kind of enjoying it at that time. It's a little bit, I guess, George, a little bit like Phantom Menace, like, in a way.
No, it is. It's what Dave says, right? That generation grows up, that generation gets jobs, that generation have disposable income, and now they can go out spending money. Not saying you're at the theatre for Hercules, but it's almost like I don't want to call it nostalgia, it's completely different, but there's some similarities, but there is business to be made from that generation that grew up with that, because life's different in 20 years. Sorry, that's a way different tangent, but it's very encouraging to see stuff like that.
I was just going to add that, for me, it's a bit. I get what you mean, but for me, it was a bit different, because I am as old as this film, which is weird to comprehend. But I came to Hercules very late, despite everyone I know telling me to watch it. And it's weird because I grew up with stuff like Emperor's New Groove, but then also The Lion King. But then I also grew up, the first film I ever saw in the cinema, one of them, was Shrek 2. So I'm in a weird middle ground where all of those two generations kind of mesh into one. And I don't quite know how that's happened, but there is a weird there is a few years where those two things kind of bleed over, where I kind of appreciate one but the other. But like I said, I came to Hercules very late. I'd only watched it 6 years ago.
Well, I do think it's really dependent on kind of your initial, how you brought up, because if you like me and George having older sisters, naturally you watch what they watch. So, I mentioned the princesses thing, but also that meant she was born in the very early 90s, which meant that she was there for the entirety of the 90s, which meant I got everything that she got. So every single 90s film, bar maybe Rescuers Down Under, I ended up seeing, because of her. Whereas I could imagine without having an older sibling and being born in the mid to late 90s, you may not necessarily get that same experience where you kind of have a natural, this is what you're going to kind of watch, and you kind of just go, oh, that looks good, or oh, this is my first time I'm going to watch that.
You've hit the nail on the head, actually, because I'm an only child, so a lot of the Disney films I grew up with were like my mum's favorites that she still had on video, like the Aristocats, Robin Hood, all those ones. And I think it was a case of her trying to get me into that, and it was just a case of, right, there's some of the 90s ones like Lion King, and I've blanked on a couple, but yeah, that I totally get what you mean, and I think that is part of it as well, is the fact that I didn't grow up with that influence. I kind of just got a weird mixture of like, here's some old and current Disney, and then also the stuff that came out when I was a kid, like Shrek 2 and Finding Nemo and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. Right, fourth round. This is going to get tough. I'm stuck between two films, and it's really tricky. They're two completely different films, if I'm honest. And I'm going to pick it on the spot. I mean, I've looked at my top 10 from last year. These were fourth and fifth, which really goes to show. I had a top three by Country Mile I've already spoke about, but I'm going to go with my heart, and it's ever evolving in the last few months thanks to little relatives. So I'm going for 101 Dalmatians. Now, this is, I'm sorry to bring live action again. I had seen the original live action 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close years before I saw this film, but I come from a family of people that love dogs, and my older sister was massive on them. This was her favorite one with Beauty and the Beast. We always had toy Dalmatians. We ended up with 3 bulldogs, now 4 with the little one. And I don't know how that happened, but whenever we go out in public, we've got a friend that's got a Dalmatian. It's called Pongo. I personally wouldn't do that, but it is cute. And if you get it the right collar, it's cute. So I'm in this patch where I'm putting 101 Dalmatians in because it's really not just a story for people that like dogs, because it's a boring, I had a friend at work who's a cat person. Her favorite's the Aristocats. Okay, great, thanks. So the dog person picking 101 Dalmatians, fair play warfare. But Cruella de Vil is quite, not that we've done a ranking, it's actually a great video content now of best like Disney villains or something. Cruella de Vil's like right at the top, if not the top. She's up there. I've mentioned Scar already, saying he's one of the best villains of all time. This is remarkable, this film. The fact someone could be so evil, she just wants to kill 101 Dalmatians. What a great logline for a film. Let's make it iconic. Incredible design. I think, Sam, you mentioned earlier Sleeping Beauty. This was the first one after Sleeping Beauty. And it's just always stuck in my head. And I think not only subconscious has an effect. You don't need to grow up with 101 Dalmatians to realize it's terrible to want to kill dogs, but it's just a very comforting film. It's a very happy film. It's cute. The couple that fall in love with each other, that have the same type of breed of dog, and that probably would happen in this day and age. So I'm putting it on there. If anyone was curious, the other pick was Wreck-It Ralph, and I love Wreck-It Ralph, but the Grinch's heart grew an inch, or whatever the saying is. We'll talk about Christmas one soon. But yeah, 101 Dalmatians makes mine.
This is the thing. 101 Dalmatians is one of those weird ones, a little bit like The Lady and the Tramp, where I'm like, have I seen it all the way through? But I genuinely can't remember. I know I've seen most of or parts of the live action one, and it's one of those weird films, both the animated and live action one, where like I know the premise, I know pretty much everything that happens in it, even if I haven't seen it or not. I pretty much know most of what happens, the visuals and stuff, and also the song that the dad sings, where he's like Cruella de Vil. But it's just one of those weird ones where like it's always existed, and pretty much most of the film. It's a little bit like The Lion King. Like, you know most of it, even if you've never seen it, because it is that iconic. I genuinely can't for the life of me think if I've actually seen it all the way through or not. But again, I know a lot of what happens in it, which kind of is a testament to, the film itself.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we actually owned the animated film. I know a friend did, and I watched it with a friend when I was a kid, but we did have the live action one, and that was the one that I watched a lot of, that and 102 Dalmatians. So I have more connection with that. And after going through my Disney watch through and kind of going to 101 Dalmatians, it is a nice film, but again, I don't think I put it too highly. I think it's another middle ground one. I think it's absolutely fine. Yeah. I think, especially if you come off films like Sleeping Beauty and go to 101 Dalmatians, to me, it loses some of the magic, I guess. I think there's something, like you said, George, really nice about the couple getting together, the two dogs, and then you kind of have all the children and see all these other Dalmatians. And Cruella is a great character, but I think I don't really love the henchman in the animated version. And I think, especially put it side by side with the 90s live action, and I think Glenn Close just blows everyone out of the water. Yeah. I just think she does such a great performance in that film. Yes, of its time, but just, I don't know, to me elevates what the animated film does, which is still a really good film. But yeah, it's not one that I could say would be on my Mount Rushmore.
That's fair. Aaron, your final pick.
So this is the one that I was debating switching out. I haven't in the end. I've stuck to my guns. But there were a couple. This is the thing, because it's Disney, there's quite a few that could have easily made the list. And there was a good 3 or 4 that I was debating swapping out for. Like, I had Aladdin, Frozen, Lilo and Stitch, and the 2 that I mentioned earlier, Aristocats and Robin Hood, for personal sake. But I've stuck to the one that I had originally, purely because I think it's a bit of an outlier in Disney's back catalogue, and that is Fantasia. This is another one that I weirdly remember watching quite a bit as a kid on VHS, even though it's not one that I would straight up say is one of my favorites. It's always kind of been there from the start, and with age I've just kind of come to respect it even more, because if you kind of push Fantasia 2000 to one side, there is nothing else like Fantasia in their entire back catalogue. And it's kind of a weird anomaly, and I mean this in the best way possible, because like, it is literally just music and visuals, and that is it. And it's very experimental for when it was released, but also kind of now. And I still think it holds up. I mean, the music is, already pre-existing classical pieces that already stood the test of time. The animation, I think, is some of Disney's best. I mean, it's still early Disney. We're talking like 1940, but some of those sequences are more iconic than some scenes from other Disney films, like the whole Mount. I can't remember the name of the sequence, but the giant devil thing on the mountain is iconic. That it's actually kind of surpassed Fantasia and is now just an iconic image on its own. The whole scene of Mickey in the brooms as the magician's apprentice, again, is another scene that is now, that singular sequence is more iconic than the actual film itself. But if it wasn't for the sequences they were used in Fantasia, they wouldn't be as iconic as they are. And like I said, this isn't necessarily one I would go to if someone asked me, what's your favorite Disney film? But it's always one that's been there. It's always one I've had weird respect for. And yeah, it's one that kind of it's like a fine wine. It gets better with age, purely because of how different and just unique it is. And yeah, visually, it's still stunning considering it came out in 1940.
I think objectively really understand, the power of this film and what it does. I think the animation is fantastic for its time. and obviously the use of the music together with that creates some really kind of powerful imagery that really does stay with you. And a lot of that, before I even saw the film, I knew of Magician's Apprentice Mickey, and I knew about the devil and all of that. I guess subjectively, personally, I'm really not a fan of the film. I watched it obviously as part of the watch of all the Disney films, and I have it second to bottom of my current list, surpassed only by Pinocchio as my least favorite. And I think I just couldn't engage with it as much as I've engaged with others. And I think because it's so experimental, it's just kind of jarring. And that shouldn't mean that it's a bad thing, and it's absolutely not a bad thing. But I guess just on a personal level, it's not a film that I could say I could go back to that and rewatch it. And I absolutely know that not film isn't just about, oh, it's good because I can rewatch it. But I guess it's an amalgamation of, once I've seen it once, I don't feel the need to watch that again, compared to a story with characters who, say lines and who, are interacting and kind of singing. But obviously it's apples and oranges, isn't it? And it totally depends on the mood as well. But I think it's an excellent film, and I think it's a really interesting choice to kind of have. And I kind of appreciate that someone has picked a film like that, because it very easily, we all could have done something that's very similar. So no, I think it's a really good pick.
I think going back to the roots as well of their origins, and as you mentioned, it's got sequences that are maybe more iconic than the film in its entirety. That still sings praises to that film, and where we are, was it 1940 that came out, like 80 plus years later, that we're still talking about those sequences and those early Disney films. Not as many are spoken about as you think. Yeah, and with Fantasia being so in brand as well with Mickey, again, the face of the company, it still adds like gravitas, I think, to it within Disney. I'm glad you did specify the 40 one, because I was going to be like, is it 2001 version for editing purposes? But thank you. Sorry, Fantasia 2000, I should have added. Yeah. Sam, your final pick.
I'm going to round out, and it's actually a repeat of one of you guys' things. I didn't say it at the time just because I wasn't sure if anyone else was going to mention it. But it's The Emperor's New Groove. Yes. And this is it's just so good, and I think I appreciate it in such a different way now as an adult. I say as an adult like I've only just become an adult. I've been one for a very long time now, but I think the thing about The Emperor's New Groove, which kind of hindered it at the time, I guess, is that it's a post-Renaissance film, and I think it falters because of that. I think it probably could have been longer as a film, like even by like 10 minutes. I think it feels a little bit kind of, rushed at the end. And I just think that because of when it was released, it just gets a bit of a hard deal, because I think people do occasionally put it in the same group as what Aaron said, Atlantis, Treasure Planet, even though Atlantis after rewatch is in my top 10, I think. But The Emperor's New Groove, I think it really is the humor and the style. I think it's such a unique film, especially at this time. And I think they really are trying different things. I think to get, someone like, for me, the standout is Isma, and it's Eartha Kitt in it. Like, I don't think anyone would have thought, a few years before, oh yeah, Eartha Kitt's going to be in is going to voice a Disney character. But she's got such an amazing voice. And she really brings that character to life, and to have like Patrick Warburton as Kronk, just them two together, two completely, conflicting voices, actors, but it just works so well. And obviously the story is just really nice. I think having it in that setting, in that time, it's just something that works. And I guess it's one of those films where it doesn't really have much singing. There's not a lot of that. It is more about kind of the story and the characters more than having to portray things through song. But the background music, kind of everything that's like non-diegetic, is wonderful. And yeah, I just think it's a really nice watch, and it's such an easy watch. I can just go into that, have a great time. Yeah, I just really love it, and I think it has had a lot more appreciation in recent times. I think I just want to go to a theme park where it has a water slide where I can say pull the lever, and I just want to be, that's my aim in life, or one of the bucket list things is to do that.
Nice. I haven't seen, so I don't have anything to say. Aaron, any more to add on Emperor's New Groove?
I mean, no. I mean, I could bloody talk about it for bloody ages, but no. I mean, Sam's taken all the bits that I kind of forgot to say in my bit. I'm annoyed that I didn't even mention Izmir and Kronk. They are two of my favorite Disney villains of all time, just because their chemistry is so weird, but I kind of love it for that. He's a bumbling idiot. She's nuts, and I love it. It's a bit Cruella de Vil-ish, I guess, but like just a bit more all over the gaff. No, I honestly don't. I mean, I could talk about it for ages, but I'm not. I'm just going to leave it. Otherwise, I could just, go on.
Lovely. Wow. That's like phase one over. I don't know what this part's called, the personal picks, however we do it, but we each go over our 4, and then we'll go into the challenge, the fun one, the long one, the combined one. But I have on mine The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and 101 Dalmatians.
I have The Emperor's New Groove, Tangled, The Lion King, and Fantasia.
And I have Sleeping Beauty, The Lion King, Hercules, and The Emperor's New Groove.
Okay, there's our lists. Now we're in the end game. Sam, you joined us on the record-breaking 20-minute argument for the James Bond one, didn't you? Joking, it wasn't an argument.
Yes.
For those that actually watched it. So we are now going from 25 films to 62 to narrow down to 4.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to read all 62 out because fair enough for Bond. Not this, please. I've got the list should it be needed. But I don't even know how we approach this. Do we want to do it in, when this is said and done, do we want it in chronological order? The 4?
Yeah.
That's always a good first question. Okay. Is it easier to start at the beginning or the end?
I mean, I was going to throw 2 films out there straight away because I think they kind of deserve... Deserve's not the right word. They kind of have earned their place.
Have to be in the conversation.
That's the best way to put it. The first one is I mean they will be put on in chronological order, but I think the first one is The Lion King, and the fact that it's in all 3 of ours kind of cements that. And the other one, I'm pretty confident with having it be in the conversation, is Snow White, because it is the first, and none of these other films would exist without it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Lion King, and Snow White for me is my number 6 in my overall ranking, and it's always been a favorite. I think it holds up in terms of importance. It's one of the most important films, definitely up there with one of the most important animated films. I think it still holds up so well. I think a good cast of characters, a great villain, some memorable music, some really lovely animation from such a long time ago. I think it absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. I guess that would be I would pick Snow White over Sleeping Beauty if I was thinking objectively pre-60s era. I would go with Snow White.
I'm in the Snow White camp. Combination of a few things. And obviously we haven't picked our 4, but it has to be a Disney princess like front runner, right? Like at least one. That's the polite way of saying it. The first one that started it all, to which the conversation doesn't exist without this. And I know some people don't like that. Oh, it's the first, doesn't have to be on. Agreed. We didn't put Doctor on the Bond one, but we put Goldfinger in, which was the third one, which put everything in motion after. And yet Disney did this with Snow White on day 1. So for me, Snow White's on the board. Lion King's on the board. Where we'll figure that out. Here's a pretty tough question from me, who isn't fond of this film, but again, I'm looking at this objectively. Does any film from the 21st century go in a conversation except Frozen? If you're looking at 4 picks, right?
There is I mean, this is the thing. There's a lot of good films in this century.
Some even the last decade, there's been some bangers.
Yeah, like I guess the closest in terms of like the modern era, I would say, is probably Big Hero 6 in terms of like cultural, what do you call it? Like cultural impact. But the only one I would probably say is up there, maybe in the likes of conversation with Frozen, is maybe Lilo and Stitch. Because that one kind of has a lot of generational, again, for people like our age, there is like a very strong appreciation for Lilo and Stitch. And you know what? I actually kind of would throw Big Hero 6 in there as well, because it's kind of, I mean, Baymax is now just an iconic character with Disney in general. And it is kind of well regarded with Frozen as like one of the best of the last decade. I mean, I don't know which of the three I'd pick, but I mean, Frozen is like the most iconic of the three, but I'm just throwing names out there at this point.
Sam posing the same question. The reason I'm saying it, because I don't have the knowledge that a lot of us do. And a lot of those films, as you mentioned, Big Hero 6, I love Big Hero 6, love Baymax. I know there's like a cult at Tokyo Disneyland. Have you heard about this? People just turn up to dance to a Baymax song every day.
Oh
my goodness!
Yeah, it's the spinny one when they just stand around it and go like this for like a solid couple of hours, and I'm like, what the
wild. But I'm glad you brought Lilo and Stitch. Love Lilo and Stitch, because this is a great thing in these lists. We get to talk about films we haven't had the chance to really focus on. But Sam, I'm kind of asking. It's not me being rude. There has to be a 21st century pick, but we know Lion King's on, right? And that's 1994. So
yeah, I think it's important to try and touch upon different eras. I guess the downside of me being here is the fact that the only post 1999 films I've seen are The Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis, which I would throw my hat in the ring on that if I could, but I just don't think it actually really deserves it against some of the others. Treasure Planet and Brother Bear, I actually don't think I've seen any others past that point, which is insane, and I will make up for that. But I guess in terms of what I've seen, I guess as someone outside it who's looked at kind of the cultural impact, I probably would go towards a Frozen, or a Tangled, or a Moana. I think they've had a lot of them, because this, I guess, so recent, it's not really the right word, but I guess with something like Moana, you can see the impact that it's had, the fact that it's got a sequel, it's having a live action so soon. It makes you think, okay, in terms of the general universe, the general audiences, what are they kind of wanting or going for? So those would probably be the ones that I would throw my hat in the ring for, but I don't think I would make a final decision on the 21st century. I'm sure whichever is up there, I will probably enjoy. So
okay, it's one, because this is going to get really like hard, isn't it, to figure out. We've got one locked in, cemented on spot one, which is Snow White. Lion King in my brain is third or fourth at present. Because again, we can't go from 30s to 90s. So I'm asking you. I mean, this is a lot harder than it looks, people. This might not be entertaining to watch because we're all just thinking in our heads. But I thought, like, if we start at the end, we can sort of work backwards. Because the reason I want to talk about Frozen, and I'm glad you brought Moana, actually, Sam. I feel like Frozen kickstarted a new generation of Disney. That, what we mentioned, I don't want to call it a slump in the early noughties, because Lilo and Stitch, glad you brought that, Aaron, was massive. I remember that was a bit, when it came out, it was huge at school. The poster was all the other Disney characters, like, what is this alien creature? And I loved it. That's being turned into a film now. Great. I guess they all are. It's like the devil's curse that comes with it. But I think something happened to Frozen where, did they do Frozen, then Wreck-It Ralph, then Moana? They've had, I feel, the last sort of 10 years from Frozen. I mean, I know people will go down to Tangled, and that's in higher palace, and I know it's on your list as well, Aaron. But I felt like, from not a popularity contest, because it's not that, but I feel like an objective Mount Rushmore, as much as I don't particularly enjoy this as other people do, and I've still not seen the sequel. And was Frozen the first sequel within the Disney? Is it Frozen or Wreck-It Ralph was the first sequel
Wreck-It Ralph.
officially?
So I'm looking at the list now, and Wreck-It Ralph came out in 2018, and Frozen 2 was 2019.
And this, in my head, I feel, and it's really awkward saying this, and it might make the list harder, that I would personally put Frozen on at the end in spot 4. As much as I'm not the fan of it, it is that next generation's Disney one that they all seem to know. And I know Encanto is like broke streaming records for years with Disney Plus. I know Moana is massive. As you said, we're getting a sequel, we're getting a live action remake. Frozen's done West End. I think it's done Broadway. It's in talks for live action. I feel I've seen that in the last couple of years. I'm sure all of them are in talks for live action. Yeah, and when it happens, it will be gargantuan. So I'm doing the devil, and people are going to be fuming. I personally think Frozen goes on, but I'm curious to know what you do.
I'm happy for like this is the thing. I like Frozen, but it's not one that I revisit that much. I think because it was everywhere when it came out, and because the songs were played all the time. I think that is why I don't revisit it as much. But that being said, even when you compare it to stuff that's come out like since, like Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, nothing quite. It was like you couldn't move for Frozen. It was everywhere, and the fact that people still talk about it now, it kind of is a testament to how. And I think I've even seen some people online call from Wreck-It Ralph to Moana. Like I've seen some people coin it as like the second Disney Renaissance, because that's when Disney kind of got popular again because of the films. And it's a shame because like I would love to put Tangled on the list. I'd love to put Big Hero 6 on the list, but I think Frozen kind of, because of the cultural, of the cultural status, it's kind of kicked and forced its way in there, whether we like it or not, because of what it is. It just kind of feels wrong not having it there.
And I'm glad you brought up Anura, because it does feel like it. There was definitely, we spoke earlier right, about that Pixar coming up. I'm not saying Pixar deteriorated, but I don't want to call it a slump. But when the Monsters University, I want to say no, because Brave came after Toy Story 3, but sort of 2012,
it was that early 2010s,
onwards,
where Pixar didn't quite know what it was doing, and then Disney kind of came in.
Yeah, it's very strange how that happened. And I just felt like, again, like Disney were dropping bang after bang after banger. Quotation, but and they were so varied that suddenly it felt like Disney were doing the reimagining side of things and Pixar were doing the sequels. And then in the last 5 years, I feel like Disney's started to go back towards sequels, and Pixar was doing some original stuff, but now they're all doing fucking sequels. Sorry. I don't want to rant about sequels, but if Frozen makes the board, Kiev, that cements Lion King as number 3, Frozen number 4, which gives us one spot between 39 and 94.
This is where it gets tricky.
It's a lot harder when there's history in play. These lists are a lot harder than before. Where do you go? If Cinderella jumps out in my head, right? And that's because it's Cinderella. It's a tale. But then the 50s run. Let's just read some of these out. Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty. That's it. Those 5 in the 50s.
Yeah, it's because they call that. I think that's the Silver Age. I think where it's like, okay, this is like a consistent run of really great. I think because you've got the war films, which is pretty much all of the early stuff. Then you get the Silver Age of post-war films, where it's like, okay, this is like a really great era. Then you get the 60s, where it's kind of I think it's like either the Bronze Age or something. That's fine. And then between the 60s and the Renaissance bit, and that's when it's like, okay, this is kind of like the Dark Ages, or you know. I think it's really different. I mean, part of me would lean against us just adding another Renaissance, because the only films that I could think of that would deserve a spot would either be Sleeping Beauty, which, you know, is kind of in the middle a little bit, or Lady and the Tramp, which are kind of my only two films that are kind of higher up in my own personal list that I think are really great films that aren't Renaissance films. Everything else is from the 90s, or, you know, Little Mermaid. I've got the odd kind of Oliver and Company, but I don't think that's worthy of that. Peter Pan is just behind that. Jungle Book is just behind that. Aristocats, they're all up there, but not as high as all of these Renaissance films. Of which, you know, Aladdin could have easily been on my list. Beauty and the Beast could easily have been on my list. I think people who weren't around that era won't understand the power of 90s, and how much they were churning out film after film after film after film. And because how many films came out in that era, which were, you know, Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under, I think, is usually ignored. Beauty and the Beast, that's 2. Aladdin 3, Lion King 4, Pocahontas, Hunchback, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan kind of caps that off. That's a good run of at least like 8 films, 9 films that all did very well. And I don't think that's something that can really be ignored.
So how I focus that, because I like this is why 4 makes it so much trickier. If it's 5, then it's easy. But the key is 4. Okay, here's my brain thoughts, because I'm sort of leaning with you, Sam, that there's those 5 we mentioned. The 5th is a classic in their own right, and you mentioned Sleeping Beauty. I know you mentioned that before. Certainly, I love Lady and the Tramp. I'd definitely have Sleeping Beauty as a neutral perspective over. Of course, like doing a bloody war effort, isn't it? I'd have Sleeping Beauty over Lady and the Tramp. But then I am there thinking, is it selfish to put 2 Renaissance films on?
I mean, the only one
I'd be looking at 2. Beauty and the Beast for the prestige of being nominated for Best Film at the Oscars. And that's a very arrogant, prestigious, up itself quotation. But then you've got then I'm also looking at Little Mermaid, which set up the new era as such. But then I am thinking, do we go from Snow White to the 90s? Which isn't a problem, because at the end of the day, it's 4 films. And it just so happens that you listed those 90s run, Sam. The Lion King is almost the peak of the Renaissance era, but it didn't just get to the Lion King. They didn't just make the Frozen sort of not came out of nowhere. So it took it more to its traditional roots of princesses and whatnot. But the Lion King, what we spoke earlier, right? The core team were making Pocahontas. That was their big hitter. And the Lion King ended up dwarfing all of it. The way my brain is going is my brain is leaning toward a Renaissance film or Sleeping Beauty. I feel like we've lost Sam as well as a visual. No, we've got Sam back.
All right, okay. Yeah. Was that me? Was that my internet?
I think it was yours. It was like you were frowning. So I basically just summarized and said, I feel like it's out of Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, or Little Mermaid. But that's me asking the question, not me saying it's one of these 3.
Right, okay.
So I'm just going to say what's on my mind before we cement anything. I've got 2 that are really standing out to me as these should be in the conversation for that final spot. And there is one that's just suddenly come to me that feels like, because for a Mount Rushmore, it doesn't have to be the 4 best. It just has to be 4 that kind of sum up that thing, right?
The entity, yeah.
And so the 2 that are immediately sticking out are 2 from the Renaissance. You got Beauty and the Beast, and I think Aladdin should be in the conversation again because of cultural impact and because of, it's still well remembered. I would say in about the same kind of conversation as The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast. I think it is still kind of stood the test of time. But the weird curveball that's just made me think. We've kind of currently got Snow White, that's the OG classic. We got Frozen for the modern era. We got Lion King for the Renaissance. would it be a ballsy move to put the Black Cauldron, which is commonly regarded as like the low point of Disney, so we've got like the whole spectrum covered? Because a lot of people commonly regard that as the low, and it just kind of, I don't know, it might just be me thinking a bit.
No, I get it. I get it. It's more. I think it's more. No, I get where you're coming from because I like that approach to it. But then it's like putting it on a pedestal above all the others. Like, hey, remember we did a really shit film once? Yeah, that's my brain's reaction to it in a non-disrespectful way. I don't know what you think, Sam. I get your logic as well. Like, we went to this depth to get to this height.
My issue with adding it is just because I don't think it's that great, and I think as much as I think, as my only interpretation of like Mount Rushmore, at least in kind of like the final list, is really kind of an amalgamation of these were kind of great films to kind of, you know, a person, but also culturally they may have had an impact either on a generation or of an era, or they were just at the very pinnacle of what they were doing. And that's kind of where I see that. Whereas, you know, I watched Black Cauldron with the hopes of I've never seen this film. Maybe it's just hated because of the time. Maybe it was just. But then after watching it, I was like, this is really not. The fact that they jumped from that to Little Mermaid in the space of 3 years or something. I think it is. I think it's so impressive. But 4 years. But yeah. So I mean, but I do think Aladdin should be in the conversation. Aladdin is my number 5 in general anyway, and Beauty and the Beast. Actually, no. For me, it goes Aladdin, Snow White, then Beauty and the Beast. So those 3 were all in contention. And I think, you know, I think what would make me not include Little Mermaid is that I think it's really great, but I think they only scratch the surface. And that's when we get to like The Lion King, you know, it's like the pinnacle. But then Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin are also excellent films in their own right. I would lean more towards Aladdin, but I understand because of Beauty and the Beast's success, obviously the accolades, you know, I think is also really impressive. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I would always keep Sleeping Beauty in the conversation too, but I think if we were all in agreement that we kind of wanted to add another Renaissance film, then I'd be happy with that too.
I'm in the same boat. Like I've been crossing out my thoughts. I'm sorry that I've written The Lion King. If anyone wants to be curious about notes and ignore the abysmal handwriting, it looks like it says sloppy Bertie. I've got Aladdin, Sleeping Beauty, and Beauty and the Beast on my notepad. And I'm fine with do we go for a second Renaissance that, as you said, Sam, like it is that peak point, right? And did Disney really peak in the not peak, but like is the summit in the 90s? And I think it is. I'm not saying they could never get there again. They could blow us all away in the next 10 years and we don't have a clue what's coming. But I don't even think it's our childhood nostalgia. I think it's actually getting older, going back to the films we grew up with thinking, well, these were bangers, weren't they? Like we did, not like we forgot how good we had it, but we had it pretty. It's like Spider-Man. Yeah, I grew up with Spider-Man films. Didn't realize how deep Spider-Man 2 was as a 28-year-old about life. And it's that things that I could narrow it down to Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. Personally, I'd be having it out of Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast. That's my brain cell. I love Aladdin. Don't get me, absolutely adore Aladdin, but I don't know. I feel it's not on Beauty and the Beast level. There's something about Beauty and the Beast which it's not just the Oscar nomination. It's the Alan Menken songs that came with it. It's the not political meanings behind it, but it's the whole don't judge a book by its cover narrative. It's got the villain, and Aladdin's got great villains too. And I think Beauty and the Beast is more akin to Sleeping Beauty, not just because it's about. I mean, Beauty and the Beast isn't even. Did they officially make her a princess after Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah.
Well, I think she's in the.
Is she one of the official? Because there's an official club, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean it's her in the yellow gold gown, which is
So where do you, I'm just curious. Is my I'm not just trying to force a narrative because I picked Beauty and the Beast, but I do feel I do feel it would be there as neutral as I can be on that from what that film did to this studio. It's like I guess it wasn't the ultimate form of recognition because it didn't win Best Film, but am I right in saying I know Pixar's obviously had nominations. Has another Disney animated ever got Best Film nomination? I dread to think Frozen probably has because of the 10 film rule, but maybe I doubt that even did. But I'm just curious what you guys think of the accolade side of it. That again, Beauty and the Beast kept building that studio upwards for when you get to was it 4 years after Lion King was Beauty and the Beast 90 or 91?
91.
What a film. Sorry.
It is actually a really tricky decision. And I think that's because there's such a high caliber of Disney film. And so you kind of want to put the right one by the side of these other, really fantastic films. Again, I would lean more towards Aladdin. And I think this is when it just goes down to personal taste because I think Beauty and the Beast is equally as good. I think they both stand like on the same level as each other. Again, Sleeping Beauty's out here on that same level.
Yeah.
But I think if we were gonna go, I would if we did a vote, I would choose Aladdin over Beauty and the Beast. Is kind of what I'd say.
Okay. Aaron, we're going to put the decider on you because I don't like the pressure. But we're all civil adults.
The one thing I can say is that, like, out of the 3 films we have been talking about, I would kind of brush away Sleeping Beauty because I've not seen it, so that immediately kind of is out of the question. So, and it's between 2 of my favorite animated films of all time. Crap. This is the thing. Like, it's weird. I enjoy Aladdin, and I would happily rewatch that more because I find it to be more entertaining than Beauty and the Beast. But when it comes to Beauty and the Beast, I have more appreciation for it and respect because of what it is, what it meant at the time, and because it's that good. And it still is that good to rewatch it, to watch it now. But I think for personal preference, for a number of different reasons, whether it's Robin Williams' Genie or the fact that we did this as a school play in primary school and I got I got cast as the bloody intro guy who talks about the Tupperware box. And that's all the script. That's all the stage time I had, and then I was just back in singing number 15 for the rest of it. I got really shafted in that. I'm going to have to pick Aladdin because it's got more personal connection to me, but I also feel out of the 2, and it's very hard for me to say this because I love both of them equally, Aladdin's got just a little bit more like entertainment value, but rewatchability as well. Like I could sit back and rewatch Aladdin any day of the week. Plus, I feel like even as great as Gaston is, I feel like Jafar is more visually iconic and recognizable as like a villain, and even a lot of things in Aladdin, like the genie, or the way Jasmine is drawn, or the way Aladdin himself is drawn, are more visually iconic than Beauty and the Beast. And again, it's very hard for me to say that because they're both masterpieces and iconic films. I kind of have to go for Aladdin because it's got more personal preference. But it pains me to say that. It really pains me to kind of boot Beauty and the Beast out, but I have to go with Aladdin.
I would say that Beauty and the Beast is probably, and if I was going to say something that would make it better than Aladdin, I think it's the more beautiful of the 2. I think in terms of animation, I think there's such a specific style that really works, and I think you can watch some scenes of that and go, oh, that's gorgeous, that looks so lovely. But we're really splitting hairs, with this. I think Aladdin in this case, and I think in terms of we bookend with 2 Disney princess films as well, and we've like kind of 2 different types of film from the 90s here. I think as an overall Mount Rushmore, I think that's a more level Mount Rushmore. But I mean, I feel like that's no disregard to to Beauty and the Beast or any of the other films that we've mentioned that could have been in this Mount Rushmore. I just think it's such a tough thing when we get to the best of the best, especially if we are going for different eras. If it was the 4 90s Renaissance films, then great. It would be. I mean, I think that would still be tough, to be fair. But I mean, I felt we'd get to an easier conclusion with it.
No, I'm with you both. So that's going to round out the overall one. So let's just go through it. So we've got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Aladdin, The Lion King, and Frozen. So we've got film number 1 through to film in the 50s. 2 Renaissance films, as we kind of said. There is a big jump from 30s to 90s, but that is the prestige of that 90s run, or where it put the studio back onto the pedestals it was. And it is one of them. So that's our official Mount Rushmore. I'd imagine it's going to be divisive for a lot of people, probably the Frozen inclusion, but we hope we've made some sense of why it's there. And again, looking at that, the studio's gone for 101 years now. Like, it wouldn't be existing if it didn't have these sorts of things. And so we did a top 10 last year where we were able to go a bit more personal and get loads more different people on for their thoughts too. So if you are curious, go check out the top 10 video. That is up on the channel. I'll actually put a link in the description as well. But that is going to do it for today's Mount Rushmore. Thank you both for jumping on. It's been a bit different. It's been, as I said, right, it's really tricky to do. The more films you have within the, because it's not a genre, because it's not an actor or performances or characters, the combination lifts are more difficult because you're stuck within a restrained, like Disney's The Block. And then when there's just as many great ones as this, like obviously we need X-Men with us, that was easy. There was like, yeah, these 2 are like locked in, guaranteed, never discuss again. Then let's just pick out the other 2. And Disney's like, wow, you have to just keep narrowing and narrowing and narrowing. And then, yeah, even if you could have had 5 on this list, I can guarantee you whatever would have been 6th place would have been a struggle to have picked off it. If this was 3, would have been a struggle to have got a 4th off. So it's a really interesting concept, the Mount Rushmore stuff, and I do hope people have enjoyed this at home. Comment your thoughts. If you're angry, if you're not, we'll reply to them. Comment your own Mount Rushmores. Do you agree with our neutral one? Is it different to your personal one? I'm always curious to get what people think. But to you both, Aaron, what are you up to at the moment?
What am I up to? Oh God, I've mostly been fixated on my writing, so I've been churning like comic book reviews out for Get Your Comic On. Over the last few weeks, I've been doing a few more film reviews for Film Hounds. I think one is dropping next week, and my videos have kind of been on the back burner, but I'm going to start trying and get back into them as we get more into the end of November going into December. I should have a new episode of For the Love of Film dropping soon. I'm not sure when, but it will be dropping soon. But there will be more stuff as we go to the end of the year.
Excellent. Sam, as well, anything you've been writing on?
No, I guess at the moment I've recently done a podcast with Really 007. So that may have been released by the time this video comes out, or it may be afterwards. But I'd say keep an eye out for that with them, talking about the 25th anniversary of The World Is Not Enough. So that's coming out soon. And then, yeah, I think there's not going to be any writing for the end of this year, I don't think. But I definitely want to do more of that in 2025. Potentially some video editing if I get some new computer software. So maybe more edits out there. I do miss doing that side of things too. But yeah, I guess there'll be a few Cinema Savvy projects. Cinema Savvy's Christmas Classics comes back. So there'll be some of that to come. We've got some Star Wars projects. So Skeleton Crew and Andor Season 2, especially next year. And also The Last of Us Season 2 is another. I think 2025 there's some coming up. But yeah, I guess upcoming is the Christmas element, which I'm very excited to get back into.
Definitely, and that's a lovely little segue, folks. So this is our penultimate episode of Mount Rushmore for what we can call internally Season 1. Next week, we're going to be back with a Christmas one. And as it will be December at that point in time, and we will be segueing into our Christmas series. So it's like a polite handover, isn't it? So that's Mount Rushmore, but it's going to be our first Christmas video for the year. So that's going to be the Mount Rushmore of Christmas films. That is going to be something. I can assure you that if it was hard doing the combined one tonight, how do you do the most open, insane genre of all? Because Die Hard is a Christmas film, and that will be spoken about next week to a capacity.
You just have Muppet Christmas Carol 4 times. Solved.
That is very true. That is true.
Exactly. So that's going to be a fun one. It's going to be, I say festive. I mean, we're recording and it's only the 21st November, so it doesn't feel too festive yet, but things are building up. So when we get around to that, of course, that'll be out on Tuesday, the 3rd of December. But once again, thank you both for taking time of your day to come on. For everybody watching at home that's been supporting us, it really does mean a lot. We have mentioned Christmas stuff. There is Christmas things happening. We're also now planning 2025. What a year it could potentially be, as we say every year. I guess you have to. Sam, you've sold it. Andor and Last of Us. I can rest peacefully now. So that's going to be this one. Again, thank you for watching. You want to find our social medias, get us on linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That'll put you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky. No, we're not joining TikTok. There's already 5 social medias now. So this is going to do it for today. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.